Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this General Government Committee meeting, April 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Could we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. Councilmember Dennehy. Councilmember Schmisher. Here. Councilmember Brandon Smith. Councilmember Stein. Here.
She's here.
Muted.
Here.
Am I muted again?
Councilmember Tracy.
She's also here.
Councilmember Worthington.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hammer.
Here.
Mayor Ashley Smith. Here.
And we're here tonight to discuss the US Highway 50 pedestrian crossing project. To get an update on that and also to talk about the possibility of establishing a Red Canyon Park Trail Committee. And so who's up here, Leo? Is that you or?
That would be me. And I'm going to pull this up. That'll work. All right. Are good, Brandon? All right, I'll give a quick introduction here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the US 50 pedestrian crossing project. This project's been in the works for quite a while, and we're going to get a little update on it today. So with that, we'll jump back over to this. And here's kind of just the outline of where we're going to go today. I'm going to cover the project history. I'm probably the least qualified person here to cover that. So if anyone would like to correct me, feel free to do so. I've done my best research on it, but that's not always enough. Talk about the plan that we have in front of us, the plan that we're getting close to pushing out to bids, the funding we've got, timeline, just some impacts and general overall synopsis of the project. So the history, from what I can best discern, this started with the 2015 US 50 corridor plan was really where I first found reference to it. As that plan was developed, it already referenced the pedestrian study that was in progress, and just the priority to make sure that pedestrian study got done. The plan highlighted at-grade crossings as being one of the preferred alternatives and provided kind of a starting footprint for it. I think this picture here on the right side is actually from that US 50 corridor plan. So that's one of the, oh, I'm sorry, that one's from the pedestrian crossing study. The previous one was formal, but the 2017 pedestrian crossing committee, what came out of that committee was a preferred alternatives report that really took the US 50 corridor plan and brought that into a more refined sense. It really focused on the area from 1st to 9th. It was quite a large group, although I don't know if there's anybody here on council that was still involved with it. Were you? Okay. Yeah, there was, it was probably like 20, 25 people in that group. Brian, was here on that. So what came out of that report was the suggestion for the preferred alternative, really. What do we want to see happen to improve the pedestrian crossings out of this? That also further advised by the West Access Control Plan, which was, kind of more led by CDOT than by us, but took a lot of leaning from the pedestrian crossing alternatives report and kind of refined that down to a little bit more access control issues and how we could improve mobility and safety on that corridor as well. So that's my brief history. I'm going any deeper than that.
Did a good job.
The plan we have in front of us today, we have a plan that is probably 95% of the way designed. It covers the entire area from 1st to 15th, which is a little bit bigger area than what was envisioned with the preferred alternatives report, but matches some of the other areas like the West Access Control Plan and the entirety of the downtown corridor from the US 50 corridor plan. Project really focuses on some minor enhancements to the signalized crossings that exist at 3rd and 9th, but really leans on the installation of 6 mid-block RRFB, which is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon crossing. And I'll go into those at the next slide to give a little more detail on what those are. Lastly, the project includes a lot of medians. So you lose a lot of the turn lane on US 50 and it becomes hardscaped median with landscaping, decorations, things like that. Really meant to invoke traffic calming in a less direct way, right? You take away a 60-foot pavement and make it feel like it's a 24-foot wide pavement that still has the same functionality as a 60-foot pavement, but kind of just naturally induces slower speeds, makes drivers pay more attention to where they're at, kind of gets rid of that zoning out effect on the road. We have a few other little things included with the project, some additional lighting, lots of new pavement markings, new signing, things like that, that kind of just go hand in hand with all the other improvements. The big thing that people will notice are the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the RRFBs. These are an FHWA approved method for improved pedestrian crossings, I guess I'll just say. They're meant for locations that aren't at an intersection, so places where a vehicle might not normally expect to encounter a pedestrian. We've got 6 of them called out right now. The 100, 400, 600, 700, 1100, and 1300 block. And then when you throw in the fact that you've got the signals at 3rd Street and 9th Street, what you kind of in effect end up with is a corridor where you never have to go more than, say, a block and a half, 2 blocks to hit one of these crossing locations throughout the entirety of downtown. The RFBs, they're a proven technique. Those are some statistics from FHWA and the National Highway Transportation Research Board studies on these. They do reduce pedestrian vehicle conflicts. They have a 98% compliance from motorists, so motorists will essentially follow those 98% of the time. Some of the other things that are a little more intensive that were envisioned with the preferred alternative were like hawk signals. Those are a little bit more like a traditional traffic signal for a pedestrian crossing, right? A pedestrian pushes a button, lights turn red, everybody stops. They're quite a bit more expensive than the RRFBs. RRFBs, the pedestrian pushes a button, a lot of yellow lights flash at you, kind of alerting the motorist that they need to stop. And it really draws on existing rules and regulations that are in place in the Colorado Traffic Code. Section 802 does require a motorist to yield to a pedestrian that's within a crosswalk. So really, we're just using these to kind of reinforce the rules and the regulations that are already there, draw extra attention to the motorists, and make it safer for everybody. I could say the pedestrian crossing study, the preferred alternative, did some traffic counts, did some modeling, looked at how many pedestrians are using these right now. And there wasn't enough to warrant the installation of a hawk, a hawk or a tunnel or overhead bridge really requires a lot of pedestrian activity to justify that expensive investment. These are lower costs, but they can be an interim step to those other things. So, if we do these and we come back and study it 5 years later and find out that, wow, now the pedestrian crossings are way up because people actually have a safer place to cross. We've made this a road that makes more sense to cross. These can lead into some of those other discussions and other options later down the road. But they
Can
give
I
us.
jump in with a question, or what's the best?
With those hawk ones, there's also a lot of frustration with car drivers because pedestrians would press it, they would hurry and cross, but then the cars would still be stopped at a red light for no reason.
Yeah, they definitely disrupt the traffic flow a lot more than these do, right? Like this isn't a requirement for a vehicle to stop. It's a requirement for a vehicle to yield. Once the path is clear, the vehicles can go. So you're not stopped waiting at a red light, until for no reason, essentially. Helps with that
Is
frustration.
this similar to what you crossed there on First Street on the trails?
First and
Yes.
Riverside.
Yes, similar. Yeah. Yeah, they're, I haven't seen them myself. I did a little bit of research. I know Castle Rock has some of these installed. I know a lot of the Denver suburbs do. Trying to think what the other one was I looked at. Is it Woodland Park on US 24 had some of these, and then they found that once they put them in, they actually had enough volume and increased the flow that they switched out and now have a hawk signal in place.
I think like Aspen does to a lot of the cities.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, it'll be new to the area, but it's not necessarily new to the region and the state, so.
It's line
we've
up
seen around.
on Highway 52. I don't know if they're Hawk or.
So.
Can,
so
can I
was
jump in
there,
with a sorry,
And they have they have.
I'm not getting
at
called
least
on.
one hawk
Can you
there,
hear me?
That I watched for quite a while because I'd never seen anything like that before. It was pretty fascinating to me because a pedestrian would come, they'd push the button, it'd flash yellow, it'd turn red, the cars would stop. The pedestrian would walk across the street, and as soon as the pedestrian, even though the light was still red, and the pedestrian was no longer in those lanes, the cars would go, which was permissible. And I didn't know that at the time. I'm saying, look at all these traffic violators, gee whiz, what's going on? But so there's a lot of training, really education that has to go along with a hawk to know how to really use it as according to the rules. Or these flashing yellow lights, everybody understands that. If a light is, you see a yellow light flashing, it means caution. And if you see pedestrians, it means stop.
Are you all able to hear us online or not?
Hello?
Do we have the exact mid-block location?
Hello?
Do, later on
Can
in
you
the
hear us?
slideshow, and then on the public website, we've got
They can't.
aerial maps overlaid with all these locations. so you
Oh
can look at
my
it. I don't know
gosh.
how well it'll show up on here as we're scrolling through it, but we do have a link to the website as well.
I'm gonna
Oh,
text
there we go.
Ryan.
Funding for the project. This is where it gets a little bit
I'm
uglier.
gonna text Is
We
Denise
have
still
right
there?
now dedicated about $3.1
don't
million
know.
in funds for this project. You see a breakdown there. You guys have done a great job of piecing together lots of small pots of money to make a really big pot of money to do this. I think right now you're standing somewhere around 90% of this money is federal and state money, with a small little bit of local match on board with that. I
Ryan
did
just
not have it
sent a
at the time I
message
put
because
this
they're having
slideshow together,
technical
but it came in
difficulties.
just this week. The current
He said,
project
Great.
estimate is about $4
Yeah,
million
have-
to
send
do
him
the
your
entire stretch
question.
from first to
Oh, for
15th.
God's
So
sake.
things have inflated. Things just cost a little more year to year. That is one of the things that we're still working to figure out is how to break this project down into a small enough piece. Where does $3.1 million get us? If we start at first, does that get us to 9th or 10th or wherever that is? The other part of this is fiscal year 24 through 26 TAP applications are now open with CDOT, and TAP, as you note above, is one of the funding sources that we've already used on this project. It's for transportation alternatives. It supports these kind of, bike path, sidewalk, pedestrian projects throughout the state. So we did prepare an application to CDOT for additional funding through that program to hopefully fill this out. We unfortunately won't know how that shakes out until, say June or something like that. But there will be a resolution on the April 17th council where I'll be asking for your support in our TAP applications, and we can go over those at that time. So, because we have a few other ones that we're putting in as well.
We're having some technical difficulties hearing Councilmember Stein and
Oh.
Tracy. I think they put a question in the question box.
Oh, gotcha. Hold on, let me see here. No, not that one, huh?
Okay, so we'll have them put any of those questions in the chat box. as
Yep,
we go.
I will keep an eye or yell at me if I miss one.
Is Brandon working on that?
I don't know that we can fix it without restarting the entire system.
So here is kind of where we sit going forward with the project.
Well, forget
They
it.
were just doing this refresh on it. We have about 95% complete plans for
Put
the
your
stretch from
question
1st
in
to
the
15th.
Emily, if you have.
I
We are
did.
making the last
I
few
did.
adjustments to
They didn't
those.
get
I
it?
did.
Which primarily includes.
I don't know.
Putting in some kind of bid alternate so we can get the bid to fit the budget.
I'll text it to him.
Have those published out for bids during the month of June. Come back in July with a presentation for the council on what we think we can afford and how to award this project. August, we'd like to do another public open house. We'll have a little better picture at that time of what the scope will be of the project. We should also have a contractor on board, so we know a little bit more about their plans for lane closures and traffic control. Obviously, there will be a lot of lane closures with this project. It'll be impactful, and having a good picture of what they envision the project, will help us give a good, clear message to the public when we get ready to start. Our plan right now is to start construction in September. We're targeting post Labor Day, September to, get done in April of 2024, so that by Blossom Fest next year, we'll be up and running with this all done. One of the other things I think we really need to look at a little more in this finalization is making sure that schedule is accurate. Does this project require 8 months? Does it require 4 months? What we don't want to see is a project that could get done in 4 months, end up taking 6 months or 8 months of lane closures that, is truly going to frustrate everybody and just be a burden on the community. So that's another piece we still have to kind of get hammered out, but that's, just want to emphasize that's our window we're shooting for, is kind of the not peak season. Oh, I do have a comment here.
And maybe, Leo, when you're done with the presentation, we'll take a break to reset, and then we can do Q&A after the reset.
Absolutely. I can address this one right now. Councilmember Tracy asked if RFDs are used on larger 4-lane highways. Yes, the ones I've seen are. They can be used anywhere from a 2-lane road up to a 4 or 5-lane road. I think some of the ones in Castle Rock that I saw were on 4-lane roads, 5-lane roads, and the one on US 24 in Woodland Park that was later upgraded to a hawk signal was on a 4-lane section of road that had a median boulevard in it, pretty similar to what we'll have here. And I think oddly enough, the traffic volumes on US 24 are pretty similar to what we have on US 50, or maybe even a touch higher. So construction impacts, I mentioned that we won't have a real clear picture until we have a contractor on board. That's kind of part of their charge, is, figuring out the best way to do this. We'll set some baseline restrictions on them, but the majority of this work is in the median and is going to require a closure of the left turn lane and probably the lanes adjacent to it on either side. So you'll have essentially 50 down to 1 lane of traffic in each direction. A lot of right in, right outs, not many left turns, not many cross movements. So it will be impactful for that. And we want to make sure that we, manage that as best we can. Don't let it go longer than it needs to, but it definitely will be impactful while it's here. Like I said, August will be my vision for when we'll have a good picture of that we can really share with the public of timeframes and impacts. So really, next steps, we do have the public website is still active for this project. It's been updated with a lot of this info. I don't know that this presentation is on there, but I think the council memos are, some of the aerials, some of these new timelines are on there. So please, we'll continue to use that as one of the sources we put new information out on. But feel free to use that and look for yourself if you need to. Have the links to a lot of the other documents that advise this project on there as well. We're going to continue to pursue funding to try to make this a complete project and not, have to leave it short for any longer than we have to. We'll have our open house in August. Date, time, location still to be determined, but we'll make sure we get that out when it does come. And we're going to try to get everybody as ready as we can for construction. So I think that's my last one, actually.
All right, so before we have any discussion or Q&A, we're gonna take a break and try and deal with our technical issue here in the room.
Okay.
That overlight was on earlier.
Okay.
Well, interesting conversation, which we've probably had, it's not a public, but getting feedback on if this roundtable thing is working with the public.
Andrea or Emily, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
can.
you can, no.
Okay.
Same here. We've been hearing you all along. It's just that you couldn't hear us and didn't recognize hand raise and so forth.
Okay, yeah, when we're in presentation mode, we don't see anybody's hands raised. Okay, cool. I think we're ready to get back to discussion and Q&A.
Okay. Let's bring it back together. So that's the end of the presentation.
Yeah, I had the aerial images on there. I'm happy to put those back up if need be, but they're on the website as well.
Okay. The. So really, this, in my view, this project was really started or, the need for this project, although not recognized at the time, really started when the decision was made not to bypass Canyon City with 50 and take a northern route around the city. Right now, we have a state highway that runs through the middle of our city. That state highway does belong to the DOT. It does not belong to us. And if they say we're going to restrict access, access will be restricted. We don't, well, there's not really options there. There's, when this plan was first presented, there were a lot of concerns, and I think that we've worked through a lot of those, but I still have one concern, and we're just creating a problem for ourselves down the road. And that's, you're headed west on 50 at 9th Street, and you want to turn in, we're taking away the turn-in lane all the way. We're going to be putting a median starting right there at 10th and going about halfway down the road to 9th that will prevent cars from using that middle turn lane. And if you look at the average number of cars sitting in that turn lane, it often extends way beyond what we've got. So what we're building is a guaranteed roadblock for one lane of traffic on Highway 50 is really what we're building, because Leo, if you see this section, here's 9th, there's 10th.
Are you on the city's website or are you on the presentation?
I'm on the presentation.
Which page?
And let's see, this would be page 12. And it's 8th to 11th, it's the top map. If you expand that, you can see that we're getting rid of a median in that area. And so and I don't know that there's an answer to this.
So I don't know that there's an answer. I think there are a couple of things that, you're gonna have improved operational efficiency at 9th Street because there will be a curb there, there will be a barrier. So, there's a lot of people who will turn left into Loaf and Jug, which currently, it's a double yellow line. It's not a authorized maneuver today. But they won't be able to do that in the future. So,
Correct.
that will improve some of that operational efficiency. Some of this is going to fall back on CDOT and the timing of those lights to make sure that they're cycling people through quicker.
So that's is really bad because that traffic is often considerably backed up. That's where this median is.
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
oftentimes, I would prefer to take a left onto 9th Street, but I'll just keep going straight through, even though it's longer for me to get home, because there's no way I'm gonna make that right. There's so much traffic wanting to turn down the street.
And so I think we need to recognize that. And this is, if CDOT says there's going to be a median there, I don't think that we have an option. Is what is my understanding of the situation. If they say there's a median there, there will be a median there. But that leads to my other question, which is for this project, are there parts of this being funded by CDOT exclusively? Are there parts being funded by CDOT and the city? And are there parts being funded by the city?
Yes to all. I have to look at the mix again, and I don't quite have all the acronyms yet. I know that the project right now has some TAP funds on it, which are federal funds that pass through CDOT and get distributed to the locals. There are some MMO funds, which are, forget the acronym, multimodal operations, which I believe are state funds from CDOT. There are ADA funds, which I think are also state direct funds from CDOT, and there is a $290,000 local match. I can't remember, TAP usually requires a 20% local match, so I would guess our local match is leveraging those federal dollars. But yes, there's a combination of state, federal, and city dollars involved.
And I go back to Mayor Pro Tem Hemrick's first point.
Have we told CDOT? I mean, I understand that we may not actually be able to influence whether or not there is a median, but I still think that we should register our concerns about their plan.
Yeah, so we.
And have a median there.
We've registered our concerns. We had a lot of meetings as we went through the access control plan regarding the closures that they were looking at, and those were open to the public. We cited them as city council meetings, so more than 2 city council members could attend those. But they were work sessions that lasted, I don't know, like 8-9 months maybe.
Yes.
I mean, based on the project history, it seems like many years have passed since then. So some of the personalities at CDOT may have changed. Certainly some of the personalities here
Well,
have changed
And
Have
the
we-
traffic patterns.
and traffic
Because
patterns
this
have
wasn't
changed.
the case earlier. You used to have the green flashing light at the beginning of the green light,
Uh-huh.
so traffic went through faster. And now it's not until
The end of the cycle.
And there's a really big difference, and that's happened in what, it's been less than a year ago.
Mhm.
Andrea, can you hear them?
Well, I'm afraid to say so because Christy might smack my hands. I
I,
can't hear him either
we can't hear the room part of the time. Just so you know.
at all.
Maybe need to speak directly at the owl while we're speaking.
I say, when we were having these discussions, the meetings were actually quite large. And so.
More
some of the
extensive.
Yeah. The part of that conversation was, these are way too long. And so there was a compromise to make little mini meetings instead. And not quite as many. So maybe, I mean, I think we need to have that conversation.
Yeah, and we have made changes. Council approved a change actually at 10th Street. So there is a turn at 10th Street now.
Yes, 10th Street is, what do you call it, 3/4 movement, and it used to be a right in, right out kind of movement. Yeah. So you can left turn into 10th Street now.
Yeah, there will be a separate turn lane going into 10th Street. So with those changes, I don't know that you could extend the turn lane for 9th Street.
But I mean, even with those changes, the median doesn't have to be that long in 9th Street.
Or since there's
Ninth-
one on 10th Street, do we really need one on it?
The
There's two.
median on 9th Street is should almost be non-existent. That's
Yeah,
all.
it shows.
No, it's like
Not
half
really,
the-
it's
half
at
the-
half the block.
And then there's
See
another
right
one
here.
So there's
Half the
nothing
block.
all the
on the
way.
10th.
Goes from here, the middle of 10th, to essentially
Start
the
at the
middle of
parking.
the block, just about.
Get it on here for you. Shoot.
A little bit hard, you may have to expand that, that's what
Yeah.
the tricky part is.
One way right there. So that
Yeah.
median right there.
So that median right there. And if we had a traffic counter sit out at that corner and counted the number of cars that extended to the east from where this median would start or end, actually, where this median would end, we would find that there would be significant times when there are cars in that lane right there. And it's, restricting access is fine. But the idea is to keep traffic flowing and not create further impediments to traffic, which we're going to do for sure. And I
Ashley
think-
and
I
are
think-
on our way to first.
So can we take another look at it?
Absolutely. I know, I had reached out to CDOT about some other complaints at that 9th and US 50 signal. I was told they implement a new signal timing pattern on April 1st. I haven't paid attention to it since then to see if it's any different in the last 5 days than it was before, but that's what I was told. So I know they are always looking at it, and it's certainly something easy to do is count how many cars can fit in that turn lane versus how many use it on a routine basis, and
Absolutely.
But we can certainly ask for more stacking there in that turn lane.
You would definitely have some data that you could use to back up this argument.
I did notice just the other day that the green light going south on 9th at that intersection of the highway was on a lot longer. It was a longer green than it used to be because I was way back there and I actually made it. So that, I think they must have changed something. along
They
there.
did, I've noticed a change in traffic pattern, the traffic lights. And I would just also remind Councilwoman Swisher that changes in CDOT personnel is not necessarily beneficial.
I just mean if there are different people in different seats, it's worth having a conversation again, even if nothing actually changes from it, it's really important that we register what our concerns are in advance and that there's a record of that. But it sounds like we might actually have some flexibility if we were the ones who initiated the change from the 10th Street right in, right out to a 3/4 turn. It sounds like we may actually have the ability to do more stacking to maybe decrease that median a bit. So that would be great if we could take a look at that and see if that would be possible.
There were also changes that were made for Hank's Travel Closets. There was supposed to be a much bigger median there. It looks like that one's quite a bit smaller. They had concerns about their big fuel trucks coming in and out as they traveled around inside, because their access is going to be changed too.
I don't think this one
And
has it.
remember, there's some changes with that.
Yeah, and that was back when we were having the
The
meetings. and the-
public meetings. Mhm.
Could I also ask about the placement of the mid-block crosswalk for First Street? I'm just curious as to how we came to that, that placement.
The median,
No, the mid-block crosswalk for First Street.
So essentially, in the middle of this parking lot out here, there'll be a crosswalk
To
going over
veterans.
to the park.
I would have to check. I believe that came right from the preferred alternative. I think that's very close to the location it was shown in that document, but I don't have the history of why it was shown there.
Yeah, I think originally those preferred alternatives, I think originally were those odd blocks, mid block crossings on the odd blocks. And then they were altered a little bit based off of some of the patterns that we're seeing through pedestrians.
I would guess when there's Blossom Festival, the festival's there, that City Hall becomes overflow parking.
Yes.
And so that's where a lot of that pedestrian traffic to connect to Veterans Park and Centennial Park to downtown into that extra parking.
Slow me down. I need to get my scooter.
And I would point out that I've been, so far I've been critical of some of the features that we've got, but one of our goals as a council and as a city is to be able to connect this side of the highway with that side of the highway. And this does do that, and there will be benefits from it.
Absolutely. I'm just, and I need to go out and walk it, but I'm not sure of what exactly it connects in Veterans Park. So I'm wondering as to how we came to that location in
It's been
terms
a
of.
long time ago.
But that's good. Well, we're at the 95% design and we'll
Yeah.
have the opportunity to make sure that everything is as it should be.
I would guess they try to put them as far away from driveways as they can too, and you get a lot of driveways and turn lanes coming in and out of there. You don't want a car turning out of Veterans Park or out of City Hall to be right next to you and you're not sure what they're gonna do. So you try to stage them as far away from those things as you can, and there's not a lot of room in that block between driveways.
I do
a
remember
little further down.
conversations of alternatives, that some of the other alternatives, it only, like if it was a pedestrian crossing over Highway 50 or a tunnel under, there'd only be one pedestrian crossing. Where the goal here was to provide several opportunities to cross Highway 50.
And not be run down.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or anything else you want to tell us or?
We have some committee members here. Rick, you were there. Brian, you were there. Do you have any enlightenment for us on the process and?
Not on the process, definitely looking forward to the implementation. And it's Third Street, I cross Third Street, multiple times a week, and it is frustrating, to say the least. So,
And
definitely been.
do we have any comments from our online members?
Thanks, John. Not at this time.
I just wanted to provide a little bit of history just for the benefit of the council, since a lot of us weren't there. Is during this time, there was that you said that large citizens committee, there were a lot of public meetings. A lot of feedback was given. We also sent certified mail to all of the businesses that would be affected by the changes and had people go do face-to-face conversations with each and every single business. And several businesses who had concerns did come to City Hall and meet together with staff and worked on some solutions. Some solutions were made. And I think this is important to say that because we did work really hard to get feedback and do the best we can. But it has been a while, memories are short. And when this construction starts, it's, when reality hits, what's gonna really happen with this, that there's gonna be frustration again. There's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be upset. I just want to remind that we did do all of that public stuff. We probably need to do some more education before it happens too, so that people are prepared for this shock to our normal daily habits.
Yeah, and I think those are really good points. And on top of all that, it has been a long time. Properties have changed hands, so there's some new property owners there. As Leo mentioned in the beginning, we do plan on doing another open house in August. We just recently, announced the open house for the Reynolds project. We've got mailers that have gone out. I foresee us doing a very similar process to re-engage those property owners and businesses there along the corridor.
That's a really good point, because I remember Hank's Travel Plaza was one of those that really had a lot of concerns, and that's one of them that is a new owner that we need to make sure to communicate with. I also, as people may have come, as it strikes at conversations, we talked about the alternative of having the hawk signals and maybe phasing to that. But maybe more conversations might be like, well, why aren't we putting in that pedestrian crossing or that tunnel underneath? And the committee really did talk a lot about those and the costs associated with it, whereas this barely fits into our grant money cycle. So this is the most affordable, created the most crossings to more people, and the pedestrian crossing at the top had issues because then you'd have to have this huge long switchback, like you almost have to walk like a half a mile just to get up across and over Highway 50 to go over the ramps.
For ADA requirements.
Yeah, for ADA requirements. The tunnel was just one tunnel. It was kind of around 4th Street. We would actually have to tear down buildings on 3rd Street to be able to create that opening for the tunnel. People were concerned about safety. That was before we had a lot of homeless problems too, going underneath of there, and then it would open up into the parking lot. Whereas in other places like where I came from in Pearl Lane, they had that tunnel. It was a tunnel from a parking garage, but then it opened up into this beautiful park that overlooked the lake, which was really ideal. And that wasn't the situation here. Plus the sticker prices were huge. That's what I remember from that. Like I said, that was a long time ago, but it might be just nice to know that in case those conversations come up further. We really felt like this was the best thing for the buck.
Okay,
But I would have one comment. As with any new infrastructure that goes in, there's maintenance. All these medians are loaded with plants and trees, and I've had a little bit of heartburn with having personnel out there, trying to do maintenance with cars doing this and that. So I was in on the initial part of the plan where we picked out some of the planting materials and tried to keep it as user friendly, I guess, and maintenance free as possible, but
What about water?
there's no such thing. We'll be feeding.
There's
5
irrigation
different,
with the project, yeah.
yeah. So there's 5 different connections along Highway 50 that will be running irrigation into the.
Oh, that's a good point.
these
We
plants.
appreciate that. But as far as plants go too, another benefit of that is the beautification of that corridor and that sense of arrival. Like we've arrived somewhere really special here. Something's happening because we have the riverfront development, the park, and it's connecting to downtown. And so hopefully it'll be something that really enhances.
Oh, yeah, I think it will, but still with anything, it's, you have to
Absolutely.
maintain it if you build it.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming, in picking out the plans, that we also were really mindful of visibility and keeping them low around certain areas. I know it's always a struggle on Main Street.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
hey, are we ready did you have something else, Leo, that you wanted to tell us? Or are we ready for our second discussion?
It looks like
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Tracy has her hand up.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think, this was a minute or two ago, talking about medians and plantings there. I would hope that the city will check with other communities that have gone through this. I think there are communities that have had vegetation for whatever reason. I don't know if it was CDOT's involvement or whatever, but they've made changes over time because of the problems of maintaining vegetation in those areas. So I just hope that the city checks with some of the other communities who've spent several years on this kind of a change in for a highway.
We can do that.
Those trucks in the wintertime spray mag chloride
Kills
all over, so that could be watering trees and shrubs and.
That's happened on Main Street.
Mhm.
Have a heck of a time keeping anything alive. That's in the rectangular planters along it.
Yep.
The folks downtown are thinking they're doing a good thing by shoveling their snow into the planters.
Yeah, right.
And they're shoveling that salt into the planter, so. We've looked at some alternatives.
It's water resistant planters, that's a big hot topic right now for
Xeriscape.
xeriscaping. And speaking of those planters, you also have little citizens that go plant their own things in there.
We sure do.
Oh, yeah.
They're sneaky and they go and they plant stuff in there. That's nice.
So
Yeah.
we did talk to Ryan about, we built two, we'll just call them demos for downtown, two square planters that are about this high. That we'll put out, and we can do a lot more, planting in that as far as annuals and more colorful stuff. And they can't be trampled and then have the dogs do their business on it and other things, so. We're gonna kind of do a demo downtown this spring and see how it flies.
Okay,
All set?
I think we're ready to move on.
Topic 2. All right, topic 2 today, we are here for discussion on Red Canyon Park. We would like to talk about the formation of a trails committee for the park to help develop a trail network in the park. So I have a little show here. It's 90% pictures and not much talking in words. We'll let the words kind of come out of here and let the pictures look at something prettier than us for a while. So Red Canyon Park, we have, I included in the packet a draft of a resolution that would establish the creation of a trails committee for the park. And I can share it on the screen later if need be, but essentially what we're looking for today from the council is if this is a direction you want to go, any comments you have on the resolution, anything like that. So Red Canyon Park, you obviously all know it better than me, 600-700 acres there, half surrounded by BLM, half surrounded by private property, has some camping, restrooms, currently just has the one road that feeds through it. A little bit better overview there, kind of shows how we situate with the rest of the BLM land surrounding their trail networks. To the south, you have Seep Springs, to the north, you have the banks. You have motorized uses in Seep Springs to the south. To the north, I believe there's no motorized uses up there. Right now, there's no connectivity to either of those. And from what we've heard from BLM, they really don't have any plans to do any expansion of their network. So whatever we do here at Red Canyon probably needs to stand alone by itself and be its own thing. It's not going to really connect to any BLM except from what you get on the road. So our resolution that we presented was based pretty similarly on the water committee resolution. I started with a little smaller group. We proposed 5 members, with 2 of them being from council, 3 of them being from the general public. I believe it specified 2 city residents, with all 3 of them being Fremont County residents. Rex, our parks director, would probably serve as a staff liaison for the group to kind of bring staff topics, bring feedback from the group back to staff. We had hoped to host monthly meetings. The real meat of it, the goals of the group, we would like the group to really take a dive into the park history, understand what the current usages are of the park, what the current amenities are, what we could accommodate at the park, what kind of things we want to see at the park. identify these targeted users for proposed trail network. I know one of the things we've heard is there is a desire for equestrian access in this area. I reached out to, trying to think their name, Red Canyon Stables. They were unfortunately not able to be here tonight, but they certainly had an interest in, you know, being involved in this when it does come up. So, as well as some of the other equestrian groups in town, I think too. So we want to prioritize the features that should be highlighted in the park. You know, the slideshow showed there's a lot of unique things to see in that park. There's a lot of cool things to see for a relatively small park of 600-700 acres. A lot of good things to see, but there's really not a lot of mileage you can put into and hit all that. We want to have a group that'll meet individually with some of these stakeholders, you know, especially the neighboring private property owners. I understand there's maybe a little bit of some of the, you know, more picturesque amenities are actually on private property, and we don't necessarily want to draw people to go trespassing onto private property and do that. So we need to understand their perspective and how to, you know, how to make this fit for their needs too, along with Red Canyon Stables, who's a neighbor and a user. You know, eventually we'd like the group to come out with some kind of conceptual plan and cost estimate for what a trail network could be in this park. We've got Steve and Jesse, you know, these guys build trails for a living. That's what they do. They're the experts. They're going to tell you, this is where you want to go. This is how you can get there. But, you know, we want that group to be involved in that as well. We want the group to be the forefront of public feedback, you know, be the advocates for the project, be the ones that are out listening to the public, presenting the pros and cons, and helping advise that project. And as I said, at the end of the day, we really want to get down to a final plan that we can go out there and build. You know, let's get some improvements out there. Let's let people enjoy this beauty and not really, you know, overuse it, I guess, too. So it's trying to find that right balance for the park. So with that, I will close this and I can put up a copy of that draft resolution that I had. So you can let me know what looks good or not on that. And like I said, it's all draft at this point, but we can take it back for one of the future council meetings when we're ready to do so.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I love Red Canyon Park and I'm really excited about the thought and effort that the city has put into kind of what the future development of it could look like. And I think the resolution in terms of both the whereas as well as establishing a really specific charter for what you're looking for from this committee makes a lot of sense, and I'm supportive of it. And would love to serve as a city council back to it. We definitely have to have this committee. We made a promise to the public that we would do that. When trails were being developed at the Royal Gorge, there was definitely a lot of concern made because those trails were not built for equestrian use. And so we made a promise that when we developed Red Canyon, that we would make sure that those trails would be compatible for all non-motorized users. Definitely want to specify that there was no promises made that it would be exclusive to equines. It was a promise to be more inclusive to all non-motorized users. And so we need this committee to do that. But I'd like to take it further is that we need to get engagement from the public at large in some ways as well. Earlier at the beginning of the year, I did a post on my mayor's Facebook page that, you know, this year we're going to start doing some plans out at Red Canyon, and there was a lot of hot passion about trails happening at Red Canyon. And there was some excitement for it because it's beautiful. They'd like to have more accessibility to some of the cool features, but there were a lot of deep passions of leave it alone. Don't mess with Red Canyon. And so even just a committee of 3 community members, that's not enough voices to really make sure we're doing what the public wants. And I have a feeling that whatever we do, not only because of money, we don't have a lot of money or ability to maintain. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think, but it might be kind of on a smaller scale than what we do. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's, you know, on the 500 acres of the park is, we're not gonna have 20 miles of trail out there. We're gonna have 3, maybe 4 max, you know, just due to the topography and the terrain and the There's a lot of rock out there. I'm just trying to get around. So, you know, obviously, we're just in the beginning stages, but we're looking at kind of maybe just a loop kind of around the park and the spurs going off to different features. So,
Interesting.
and of course, that's like I say preliminary.
We do have a question from Councilmember Stein about, she thought that we already had a Trails Committee. I believe that is the Trails Events Committee for
That
commercial
was-
trail events,
Yeah,
correct?
to develop the commercial trail use policy.
I'm curious what Steve and Rexy did more, and Jesse, your input about Red Canyon, just so we could be prepared and ready for what's coming ahead.
I do the duty of council, Rex, Ryan, and Leo. What I see out there is that if we could define a smaller, multi-use path, then potentially what we could eliminate is people exploring willy-nilly, trampling, native vegetation, getting themselves into hazardous situations for potential flooding. There's some pretty deep sandy canyons in there, slipping off rocks. And then if we design it properly, eliminate issues of vandalism, because there's some dark corridors in there where people have found make good party spots. But if you put a little bit more responsible presence into that park, that could deter that. I think that it could eliminate people not seeing property boundaries and seeing features that are on private property and just saying, I'm going here to take my photos. We would have trail maps, potential kiosks, designated parking areas. We might get more community cooperation of having it be, multi-use. You might actually end up pleasing other trail users that could enjoy it. And if the committee and the public work together, then in essence, you might actually preserve more of the park in the future. Because as of now, I see a lot of people just going in any direction they see fit with no guidance or direction other than where their boots or their animals take them. That's what
Steve?
I don't have a whole lot to add to that. Jesse and I did explore a bit, and as Rick said, there's so much bedrock out there that we really can't build an extensive network. So the idea of having a loop, more or less, I think is the appropriate way to tackle that. And the nice thing about doing that, we could get on a higher bank to the south side of it that would give you just tremendous views of the core of the park and many of the features within the park. And as we were saying, then that spurs to these individual features that are worthwhile, and I think would attract a lot of hikers in particular. So, yeah, because of all the bedrock, it's not suitable for equestrians in some of those areas, but the overall loop trail would be appropriate and would be just amazing. And I think using the road as they do now, plus that loop, will give them a decent loop from the stable. So I think they appreciate that.
I also have members of the public here. Love an opportunity to hear from you all. Brian, I know you have opinions.
Well, I guess if it were asked, but at this point, FAR is going to take a back seat and not participate in, directly in the, any committee or formation. I think it was, it was basically, this is the room that the equestrian groups can participate, that they committed, funding and volunteer, contributions similar to FAR, and this is the place they can do that. If they say wish, and we'll let them run with it.
So we're not expecting letters of application for the committee from FAR members?
Correct.
Okay, that's good to know. in
What
advance.
about direction?
And Tim, do you have any?
I'm a motorized guy,
Thank you.
so,
Yeah.
but I'm all for it. Our ATV group we've got a memorandum of understanding with the BLM for Seep Springs, so we help maintain Seep Springs. So that's just the reason I'm here. So we've done a lot of work in Seep Springs the last several years. Got some new trails built and actually we're going out there this Friday to repair some fence that keeps getting vandalized and things like that. So that's, you know, just being that we were just right next door to the park. That's why I'm here.
Thanks for the representation.
As a motorized user, do you see any conflict with equestrians in the Seep Springs area?
No, we encounter them and we meet with the backcountry horsemen. Actually, we had a get together with them a few weeks ago and had an educational lunch out there. What happens if, you know, in case an ATV or a motorcycle encounters a horse, what to do. And so they kind of taught us on what to do in case we do encounter a horseback rider, and it worked out really good. It was real educational and you know, everything seemed to work out really well, you know, between us and the horses. So, and they kind of encourage that, you know, to get the horses familiar with different surroundings. You know, some don't like humans, some don't like motorized, so it's good to get the horses exposed to that kind of stuff, so.
Okay, I guess the one thing, just following up on one of the comments that you made, vis-a-vis getting additional public input beyond just a committee of 3 citizens, I think we could, the main objectives of the committee section of the resolution does lay out really specifically what the expectations of the committee are, including meetings with individual specific project stakeholders and, you know, reviewing and understanding the existing park history and its usage. And I wonder if there is an opportunity there, without being too prescriptive, obviously, but say, you know, seeking additional public input. I guess I would hope that, given the city staff's initial vision of having a very small contained trail system that is actually designed to ensure that there isn't damage and that there isn't vandalism, and that kind of you're directing traffic flows to places that are most appropriate. I'm hopeful that that would relieve some of the concern or some of the passionate comments that people had about the idea of perhaps without additional context, thinking that we were going to try to put 20 miles of trail into a, you know, a relatively small mountain park.
Absolutely, and in that same Facebook feed and in an email, I mean, there was a user saying, hey, we're making trails at Red Canyon now. Why don't you just put signs up and make it official? And BLM immediately said, you need to stop doing that right now. And I think the same comes from the city. Like that is not a responsible way to take care and be a good steward of Red Canyon. And so, to your point, we can't do nothing because people are already doing stuff out there. We need to create an opportunity for it to be responsible and to protect the overall, the park in general. But even if there was like an open house, maybe when they come with a plan, have a little open house so that people are invited to have opinions, or do something with where it's online, kind of like the Clocktower Plaza. I don't know what that looks like.
Sure.
But I know that people are going to need to be able to have a voice, and that could be part of that education too.
Yeah, I think I was trying to be mindful of the water committee has struggled to find enough members to fill some of those committee seats. So I didn't want to make it too big and then, you know, get stuck trying to fill it forever. So we could look at adding some more public engagement and outreach to kind of the charge of that group and let that group decide what is the best method to get that out to the public, whether it's a survey, online, open house, whatever that looks like.
It doesn't need to be cumbersome, especially if we're just talking about a 3 mile loop.
Yeah.
But still. But thank you for all your work.
But so what having heard that, Leo, and having heard your original comments, Mayor, what did you have an idea of what you thought the more appropriate size of the committee was?
No, I don't think you want it too big, because then you won't be able to have the dialogue that you need to have.
I think our challenge then is to balance that, to be able to have enough diversity of voices to be able to represent all the views, I think. And so that didn't.
Would it potentially makes sense to have your open house before you fill the committee. Because then you would have the people that might be interested in what's coming forward and what they're doing to get those that are really interested in seeing it be
Oh,
done.
there's a lot of people interested. I have-
Right, I know, but I guess what I'm saying is, I didn't know if it would make sense to perhaps educate before you have them commit, so it's just an idea.
It is an idea. Sometimes, often for open houses, usually there's something to present to them to give feedback on.
Well, this is a good presentation just this way, but at least it would, what you're doing is educating as to what the vision is. And then that way you've already put it in people's minds as to what you're trying to accomplish, rather than filling it and saying, well, I'm coming with all these ideas. So it's just an
No, instead of
idea.
like, we already made all the decisions.
Yeah.
Now we're trying to convince you to like it.
Yeah.
Well, that's where, going back to like Clock Tower Plaza, that's why we did the survey up front. So we could get those, that feedback and that input, so it could be built into what that final design looks like. So I think there's a process or, a work methodology that we could go through to kind of extract some of that information before we get too far down the road.
That's a really good point.
And I think some of the input that is always welcome, but coming from a professional trail designer and builder, he's the guy that should be planning the trail. It's true as far as where it goes. So sometimes you get a lot of people, well, we need to go here and we go here and there, but it's not sustainable or it's not doable. So maybe even just having a conceptual design, maybe to go to the open house at that point. Here's kind of what we're thinking. This is what the land is going to allow us to do. And then kind of go from there. But I don't know.
All right, so basically.
We really don't. Go get it.
So are there any other suggested changes to this resolution? Council's good with this resolution? And because if you are, we can put it on the next council agenda.
I am wondering though if 3 is enough.
Yeah.
Maybe stepping it up to 5 citizens at least.
How many do we have on the energy committee? Because we've had some drop offs on the committee, and of course, it's gone for a year and a half, and it's still gonna chug along here for a little bit, but
we never did get a commercial.
we never did.
Business.
I think we have seven
Seven is what I'm
seats,
thinking.
but there's only 6 committee members for energy.
And actually 5 now, right?
Who dropped?
Well, let's see, maybe I'm not counting.
I think the
myself.
difference is I suddenly became a council member who's
Oh.
just a committee.
Yeah, we changed the makeup to
Yes,
not lose the
accommodate
expertise.
that.
I think if this is really short, there's not a lot of commitment and there's a lot of passion and it's a little bit more fun than energy.
Here, here.
We didn't have a lack of applicants for the Trails Committee though.
You did or didn't?
Did not.
No, and yeah.
And I'm assuming they'll be elected by council. They'll
Mhm.
come in and do their presentation.
I mean, I do think it could potentially, the appointed group wouldn't start until August. I would imagine it would take quite some time. Do you have a rough idea in your mind of how many months they would be meeting?
I think probably 2 to 4 meetings would be enough. How many times do we meet?
Are you aiming for September or when you, after the?
During that process, we met.
Or do you want
We got a shovel in that area.
I'm not opposed to having additional members, but I do, it does seem like sometimes when you have a smaller group, people are more committed and
Yep.
feel the need to show up on a more regular basis. So I'm also very happy to support the Public Works Department's recommendation.
Yeah, I think if you're part of a committee that has a lot to do, I think that you get a better committee.
This committee does have a lot to do. The resolution asks for a lot of fact finding and
Right.
actually work. It's not gonna be a simple thing to be on this one. what city resources will the committee members have to be able to answer the questions we have in the resolution? Rex and Steve.
And Jesse, oh, sorry.
Very good.
Tried to reach out.
You know, when you're talking 3 to 4 miles of trail. And Steve is a seasonal employee with the city. If he's not doing something else, I mean, we could have. Depending on Steve's schedule. He skis a lot and stuff. What do you think?
Well, I
Time
think,
wise, if you were,
right.
yeah,
Well, I think we should get the conceptual design done, and see how much trail we'll actually end up with. Jesse and I could spend a little more time on the ground, pin it down. But if it ends up being 3 miles of trail, that's one season for me, so, yeah.
And from a public outreach standpoint, as resources, you'll also have Christy Goff, our public information officer.
Okay,
But no budgetary resources at this point. It certainly wasn't in the 2023 proposed budget.
Not unless Rex has some money squirreled away somewhere.
Or I think the client group has some money they've been fundraising for.
So we've got a lot of maps, we've got a lot of topographical, Steve and Jesse have done some of the work to identify where the key features are in the park that we can provide. Drop a pin and say, hey, this is a place we should try to get to. This is a place we should try to get to. These are areas that you're never gonna be able to build a trail, no matter how hard you try. We can provide a lot of that detail to the group by the time they get formed and started.
That'd be nice. Make it
Well,
real efficient.
I'd note that the charter involves a review and understanding park history. Is there some way we could loop Lisa Stutz into that for a temporary liaison or something like that? I mean, that might be that might be a project she might actually like to do.
I'm sure she has a lot of history already, but yes.
Absolutely. And identify targeted users, prioritize features, that's what you're talking, is kind of that type of thing. But meet individually with specific project stakeholders. And so that's gonna take a little bit. Conceptual plans and costs, of course, that'll be probably pretty much in your bailiwick.
Yep, that'll be a staff.
A staff function. And then solicit public feedback, but that's more of a citywide type. Once it gets to that point, then we are ready for open house phase 2 or something like that, I think.
Yeah.
So.
I'm excited about trails in Red Canyon Park because I've explored that park. Probably more than anybody in this room over the last 30 years, but there's driving through the park on the road, you don't see anything compared to when you take a step over the ridge or you climb up on this rock or you go over here and get on that ridge. So that's, to me, that it's a diamond run. And as always, my greatest fear is creating monsters, and with short 3-4 mile loop, I feel good about that.
I like it when you're excited and feel good.
Few and far between.
Okay, any other comment or do you think, Leo, you've got enough direction of what to do with
I think so.
with the resolution? And so I guess next step would be to bring it to city council. That'll be the next step. And put some thought into whether we should have a kind of an open house to discuss concepts and solicit members. Maybe that might be a good way to, because if there are multiple groups and multiple people that are interested, it's going to be awfully hard to limit it. And so it might be good to understand for sure the scope and breadth, or the breadth and width of the public interest that may or may not be
Sure,
part of
maybe
this.
nobody will show up.
Maybe nobody will show up.
I'm sorry.
I say we can fix that with beer, but.
I wonder if we could even just have that kind of, hour-long public open house the night that we are considering the resolution, and just you know, essentially have that presentation, have folks here to talk about it, but keep it pretty
These guys need to
casual
do
and
their homework
informal.
to be prepared for that open house, so they've got a lot of work to do.
Oh, but if, I think, to Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick's point, knowing in advance how many seats we should have on the committee, would be
So
beneficial.
it's, in other words, it's a way to gauge perhaps public interest. To be able to fiddle with the resolution if we need to. But I'm, you know, it's the, I'm neutral on how we do it. It's almost, I don't know that it's a horse and cart type question, because we, you know, it is not that complicated. I mean, it is a small area, and we're not gonna be installing hotels over there, or, you know, ATV roads or things like that, so.
Is there a path where we could adopt the resolution with 5, open it for interest, and if we get 20 applicants, we rescind the resolution and revisit how many members there are, or
We can always.
amend it.
or amend it, you know, and just, you know, in between, let's get started with that and see how things go,
Plus
and
you
then.
have to look at the user groups. I mean, you're pretty limited. You're either a hiker, a biker, or an equestrian, basically. For user
Or
groups.
don't do anything ever.
Yeah, one of those.
Does,
So,
oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Rex.
no, that's what I'm saying. You know, we don't want one stakeholder entity overrepresented.
Right.
We just named at least 4, so I
Yeah.
think we need to at least have a committee of 5.
Yeah.
And then we can adjust as needed.
That sounds about right.
It does look like we have a couple members of the public that joined us via Zoom, and we do have one hand raised.
Okay, sure.
How do you let them speak?
Hang on, we're dealing with the technical issues of taking public input.
Brandon, usually there's controls on this side. I don't know if you have to do it from your box.
That might be a yes.
Post in it.
Yeah, I look like a yes.
Looks like
Oh, there we go.
So,
Hello.
Kathleen,
Yes, I would, I live on Red Canyon Road. I'm an equestrian rider, and I'm very interested to help on the committee or in any area that you guys need some help in. So I don't know how I can do that, but I would love to be a part of it.
Maybe if you could put your information in the chat, then we can make sure you get the link to apply to be on the committee.
Okay. All right, I will do that.
thank
So
you.
just,
I was gonna say, so from a process standpoint, what we're looking at is, we'll take the resolution to council at the next city council meeting. During that meeting, assuming city council approves the resolution, we'll put a timeline out there for those applications to join the committee. And then after that, there will be a selection process that will be held by city council. So usually probably about 30 days after the city council meeting.
and we'll be responding to letters of interest or emails of interest
Yep.
or whatever,
That's correct.
people would like to do to raise their hand.
Thank you.
Thank you for your interest.
Okay, are we happy with where we are? Is there more wheel turning we need to do here?
I think we're
good.
I think we have our direction.
Okay, if that's the case, I believe we're adjourned then. Thank you.